Okay, next up is going to be He Who Fights with Monsters, book number 6, written by Shridloon. This is 568 pages, $6.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. I should note that I'm actually listened to this as an audiobook, so there's an entertaining story in that respect as well. But here is the novel description. The world teeters on the brink of destruction. The people who should have been saving Earth ignore Jason Asano's warnings and choose to loot the house as it burns down around them. He lacks the strength to save the world himself, but resolves to do it anyways. Impossible be damned. The impossible, in this case, means seizing a power that no mortal should touch. It's a choice from which there's no turning back, and Jason's first steps into a wider cosmos that he is not yet ready to face. Holding the fate of two worlds in his hands, Jason must decide for himself what home truly means. That's actually a really nice description. It touches on all the big points without actually telling you anything that's going to happen and spoiling things. So again, this is, I actually didn't read this as an ebook. I actually listened as an audiobook, and it was a fantastic experience on the narration side of things. The narrator is amazing. I'd have to look up to see who it is, but he's an Australian narrator, and man, his accent's great. Like I've always really enjoyed his stuff. His American accent's a little like, okay, I guess that's technically American, but but his other accents that he does and his voices are just fantastic, and they really, punch up the story a notch for me. As far as the content of the story itself, yay. That's how I always feel about these particular stories, especially since I kind of shifted from the ebook version to the audiobook version in this particular series. The audiobook narration just really, knocks it up an extra level for me. Jason is still on Earth in this book. This story does end the Earth arc. It really does cap off everything, all the issues that were involved in the series, and the way the issues develop, I thought were actually really interesting. There's some politicking going on. There is some, working with the enemy for the greater good kind of stuff going on in the story. And I thought all those social conflicts and all the, betrayals, or whether or not they happen or not, or the tough, almost villainous choices the main character may have to make, for the benefit of humanity, to make sure that his Earth, his home planet, and his family and everything all survive, and some of the threats that are made because of those decisions all had very good and realistic consequences. And so I really enjoyed those conflicts. And of course, the action is always good. Like the actual physical fighting stuff is plenty of this thing. This is a good, long, entertaining story. There are a few places towards the end where I was like, oh, those villain actions felt a little bit forced, and they felt a little like, oh, these things happened out of scene, and we're just letting you know about them now so we can do this, further this plot thing. And that happens. The plot does advance, and it's nothing that the main character does. It is all stuff that for the villains and their actions. It felt a little bit forced, but it wasn't a big enough the deal for me to be like, oh, this ruins it. It's like, oh, okay, okay, it has to happen, I guess, for these villainous actions to work and for this particular plot line to unfold. But the final results were entertaining. I was like, okay, we'll let it go. But they were notable for me. Overall, though, I thought this was a great story, especially again because the narration really just bumps up the entertainment value, for me at least in this particular case. The ebook version, so I'm giving it a score of 8 out of 10. It's a great story. I'm sure if you have been listening to it or reading it, you probably agree. Enough reviews show that's the case. So He Who Fights with Monsters, book number 6, with a score of 8 out of 10. It's a great story.